Nela constituency head Tulani Tefuta has defended Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, saying budget decisions are a product of collective executive input. This comes in the wake of calls for Godongwana to resign over the budget impasse. Tefuta insists that no individual should be penalised for expressing differing views. He adds that if accountability is demanded, it should extend to the entire executive, not just a single minister.
From day one, from budget 1, budget 2, and now as we get into budget 3, we were amongst those who vehemently objected to the increment in VAT. And so we see this as a victory for those of us who have been making this call, and it must happen, appreciating as well the fact that there are windows through which a budget goes through. There is never a budget that is a budget that is owned by an individual. If we make that call, it is a call that must affect the whole of government, everyone and anyone who is in government, because it is the executive that presents a budget to the National Assembly as a collective.
Former SCOPA chairperson Themba Godi joins us for more. Themba, appreciate your time this afternoon. Now, drawing from your experience as SCOPA chairperson, how do you assess the current government fiscal discipline, particularly considering Minister Godongwana's recent budgetary decisions?
Well, you know, for the longest of time, the assumption has been that the National Treasury is the bulwark against waste, mismanagement, and corruption in government. But over time, especially during my time as SCOPA chair, and which I think has gotten worse by now, we realized that National Treasury is actually not that oasis of integrity. It is actually part and parcel of the malfeasance and lack of accountability that we see in government. And the current budgetary debacles are themselves a product of wrong procedural choices, as well as wrong, political choices. I think during my time, there was a lot of scrutiny over government and calls for accountability through the media as well as through SCOPA. But subsequently, I think that accountability has been very lax in Parliament. In fact, I dare say that one of the ministers, Minister Ntshavheni, I think she reminds me of Trevor Manuel, contempt for Parliament and accountability. And so it is throughout. And this debacle around the budget reflects that cavalier attitude towards work.
Now you talk about malfeasance and lack of integrity around Treasury, right? Words which shouldn't be synonymous, certainly, with the Department of Treasury. Just walk us through some instances that you have at hand where this malfeasance and lack of integrity has been evident.
You know, government always laments about corruption. If you look at the budget statements of almost all ministers, there will always be a paragraph or two calling for the fight against corruption. And yet, government correctly decided to establish what is called the Integrated Financial Management System, IFMS, during the time of Pravin Gordhan as the minister, which was supposed to integrate financial management within government so as to curb corruption. And it is in treasure. And I bet you until today, billions of rands later, that system is not in place. So if government was serious, if National Treasury was serious about fighting corruption, that is the one system that they should have fought tooth and nail to ensure that it is operational, because it was going to solve a lot of their problems. Secondly, if you go through the reports of the Auditor General over time, you realize that National Treasury has not been getting clean audits as such. In fact, it is getting worse. And you'll recall last year, National Treasury was challenging the Auditor General because the Auditor General has found that the money they are paying to Oracle for licenses that should be used at the IFMS, which is not operational, and yet they are paying for these licenses over a long period of time, is fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And even right now, the statement from Treasury that budget 3.0 is going to, be more prudent. They're not going to waste a lot of money around it. They sound very much like any other pedestrian department in a municipality when it comes to accountability, when it comes to, being economical with the resources at their disposal.
Themba, the proposed VAT increase faced significant public backlash. Now, in your view, were there shortcomings in stakeholder engagement and public consultation during the formulation of this policy? And is this likely something that's going to be taken account as they come up with the Budget 3.0?
Look, the budget presented to Parliament is a cabinet statement. And the fact that, we had a spectacle of all members of the GNU coming out to say they oppose the budget when it is supposed to be their statement, it's the most laughable of things. And I personally feel that the calls for the minister to resign are really misguided, because that is not his personal property. His failures reflects the failure of cabinet, and if there is a call for accountability, it should be on cabinet. And if you go to the constitution, I think it's section 102, it allows Parliament to pass a vote of no confidence on the cabinet, not on an individual minister. So and of course, I think the ANC is behaving like a bankrupt millionaire. They still behave as if they have a majority and can just, push things through without getting the consensus from their partners, even for wrong decisions. But we have been subjected to a spectacle where nobody wants to own the mistakes, nobody wants to own the rejected budgets, which is meant to confuse the public, not to pinpoint the exact area of weakness, which is the current coalition government.
So my question remains unanswered, Themba, and that is, are we expecting that Budget 3.0 will be a more collective effort, greater reflection of the members of the GNU, so we don't have to go to a Budget 4.0?
All right. Well, no. I think they have no choice but to do that, because remember, there are time frames within the PFMA within which budget should be passed, and the time frames within which departments are allowed to continue spending before a new budget is passed. So if the minister were to bring a budget that the ANC rejects and the DA rejects, it will mean we'll go to budget 4.0, and it will then call into question whether the current government should not fall. So I think, having crossed over this issue of VAT, which they have now agreed to remove, I don't think there's any party that cares about what happens next, which is you are going to see expenditure being cut. To meet the budgetary shortfall, they're going to cut down on expenditure, and it's going to affect poor people by and large. So I expect that when they come back in 3 weeks' time or so, they would have agreed on what they needed to do. Not that they would have agreed on the right things, because the current austerity processes that the minister has affirmed is going to continue means that the poor are going to suffer. You're not going to have an expansionary budget. You're not going to have services being delivered to our people. You're not going to have the economy growing. So yes, the parliamentary process are going to be managed, but the real social and economic challenges that face the majority are also going to persist, as they've done for the last 30 years.
Themba, appreciate your time. Thank you for speaking to us. Themba Godi, former SCOPA chairperson, speaking to us on Budget 3.0, and the likelihood from this budget, he suggests, is that the poor will continue to suffer.